You had a great conversation with her, or at least you thought you did. You talked about your job, your hobbies, your favorite shows. She smiled, nodded, even laughed a little. But the next day, she barely remembered you. Sound familiar? Here's the truth. Most men try to connect with women through logic. They rely on facts, achievements, and clever lines. But what they don't realize is, a woman doesn't remember what you said. She remembers how you made her feel. That's where the disconnect begins. You're speaking to her mind, but attraction lives in her emotions. And unless you can tap into that emotional layer, you'll always be forgettable no matter how successful, funny, or nice you are. Think of it this way, she won't remember the guy who asked about her job. She'll remember the guy who made her laugh unexpectedly or who made her pause and reflect on something she hadn't thought about in years. In short, she remembers the guy who touched her heart, not just her head. Let's break down how to become that guy. Most guys approach women like a job interview. They think if they say all the right things, where they went to school, what they do for work, what kind of car they drive, she'll somehow check all the boxes and choose them. But here's the harsh reality. Women aren't logical when it comes to attraction. They're emotional. This doesn't mean they're irrational. It means attraction for them happens on a different level. While men are often visually triggered, a woman's desire is usually sparked by how someone makes her feel. It's less about what you offer and more about what you awaken in her. You might be the smartest, most well-dressed guy in the room. But if you're not stirring any emotion, you'll fade into the background. On the flip side, a guy who creates an emotional spark, even if he says very little, becomes unforgettable. So what does this mean for you? It means you need to stop aiming for her approval and start engaging her emotions. You need to speak in a way that makes her feel something, not just hear something. Instead of asking, "What do you do for work?" ask, "What made you choose that path?" Instead of, "Where are you from?" Try, "What's your favorite memory growing up there?" Questions like these shift the energy of the conversation. They move her out of autopilot and into emotional awareness, and that's exactly where connection lives. In the next part, we'll break down the mechanics of creating that emotional connection step by step. So how exactly do you shift from surface-level talk to deep emotional connection? It all starts with one skill. Most men overlook emotional listening. Not just hearing her words, but being present enough to unlock the feeling behind what she's saying. This doesn't mean you nod endlessly or give generic reactions like, "That's cool" or "nice." It means asking questions that gently guide her away from logic and into her inner world. Questions that invite her to remember, feel, and share. Let's say she tells you she studied architecture. Most guys would respond with something dry like, "Oh wow, that's impressive." End of topic. But the guy who gets remembered, the one who makes her feel something, might say, "Architecture. That's such a creative field. What drew you to it in the first place?" Now she's not just listing facts, she's reflecting on childhood dreams, family expectations, or moments of passion and doubt. She's feeling, and more importantly, you're the one who unlocked those feelings. That's emotional connection. And here's the key. Once you open that door, don't rush to walk through it. Stay with her. Let her speak. Let her feel heard. If she says something meaningful or vulnerable, don't pivot to a joke or your own story. Just sit with it. Let her process. Give her space to be seen. Because in that moment, you've stopped being just another guy. You've become a mirror, a space where she can feel emotionally safe. And that, for most women, is far more attractive than any compliment car or flex. Later in the conversation, you can bring in your perspective. You can relate with your own experiences. But only after she's felt that you truly get her, not just as a checklist of interests, but as a living, emotional human being. In the next part, we'll explore how to ask questions that lead her there naturally, without feeling like an interview. Now that you understand the importance of emotional connection, let's talk about how to create it through questions without sounding like you're reading from a manual. The biggest mistake most guys make is thinking that memorizing a list of deep questions is enough. So they walk into a conversation and start firing off. What's your biggest fear? What's your dream in life? And it comes off robotic or forced. The girl senses it instantly. Why? Because context matters, and so does emotional timing. Emotional questions only work when they flow naturally from the conversation. Think of it like jazz. You're not following sheet music, you're listening and improvising based on her rhythm. Let's break it down. Say she mentions she's always wanted to travel alone, but hasn't had the chance yet. A typical guy might say, "Oh, cool, where to?" But you lean in and ask, "What's been stopping you?" That's not just a question, it's an invitation. You've created a moment where she can be real. Maybe she talks about fear, maybe responsibility, maybe her desire to prove something to herself. You don't just get an answer, you get a piece of who she really is. Here's the formula. Start with something light or factual. Pick up on the feeling underneath it. Ask a question that opens the door to that feeling. Let her walk through it. Don't push, don't judge, just listen. The magic happens when she surprises herself with what she shares. That's when you know you're building something real. Also, don't turn the conversation into a Q&A marathon. Between emotional questions, share little reflections of your own. Not to impress her, but to show that you understand. Real conversations are like dancing. You both take turns leading, following, and flowing. Most guys talk to impress. But the men who truly connect, they talk to explore. In the next part, we'll talk about how to maintain emotional momentum and avoid slipping into interview mode, which kills attraction faster than silence ever could. Now that you know how to ask emotional questions, let's talk about something just as important: how to keep the conversation alive without turning it into an awkward interview. Here's the problem: when most guys here ask deeper questions, they go overboard. They ask one question, get a short answer, and then immediately jump to the next. What's your biggest dream? Cool. What's your biggest fear? Okay. What's your most embarrassing moment? It feels mechanical. It lacks rhythm. And most importantly, it doesn't feel real. You're not connecting, you're collecting. So how do you avoid that? 1. Let her answer fully, then go deeper. Don't just ask one emotional question and move on. Follow the trail. If she says she always wanted to be a writer but didn't pursue it, don't say, "Oh, okay," and skip ahead. Instead say, "That's really interesting. What held you back? Or do you think part of you still wants that?" These second-layer questions show genuine curiosity, not just clever scripting. 2. Respond emotionally, not analytically. If she opens up about something vulnerable, don't analyze it. Don't give advice. Don't joke right away. Just reflect. Even something simple like, "That must have felt like a lot to carry." That tells her, "I see you." 3. Share your own emotional truth. You don't have to give her your life story, but when appropriate, share little pieces of your own feelings, not just facts. If she talks about losing motivation during college, you might say, "I get that. I had a phase where I was showing up physically, but mentally checked out." It's hard when no one sees that. Now it's no longer an interview. It's a real moment between two people who understand each other. 4. Use callbacks. If she mentioned something earlier in the conversation, bring it up later with emotional insight. For example, when you said earlier that New York feels overwhelming, do you think that's why you love hiking so much? This tells her you've been listening on a deeper level. That's powerful. When you create this kind of emotional flow, time disappears. 10 minutes can feel like an hour, and an hour can feel like a memory that lasts years. That's what connection actually looks like. In the next part, we'll explore how this emotional momentum naturally leads to deeper attraction, and how to avoid the dreaded therapist zone where many guys get stuck. Let's get something clear. Emotional connection is essential, but emotional overcompensation is a trap. Many guys, once they realize how powerful emotions are, go all in. They ask the deep questions. They listen. They reflect. And soon, they find themselves in what I call the therapist zone. It's a lot like the friend zone, but more dangerous. Why? Because in the therapist zone, she does open up. She does feel safe. She does trust you. But she doesn't want to kiss you. She doesn't fantasize about you. She doesn't see you as a man. You've become her emotional sponge, but not her romantic interest. So what went wrong? You focused too much on making her feel heard and not enough on building polarity, that tension, that spark that separates a lover from a listener. You see attraction lives where safety and challenge meet. You gave her the safety but forgot the edge. Here's how to fix that. 1. Balance empathy with playfulness. Yes, listen deeply, but also tease her lightly. Make her laugh. Push back gently when she says something outrageous. Show her that you're not just soft, you're sharp, alive, and unpredictable. For example, if she says, "I get really stressed at work," you might say, "You strike me as the type who pretends to hate stress, but secretly thrives on it." 2. Flirt through the feelings. Don't be afraid to add flirtation into emotional moments. If she talks about how emotional she gets watching old movies, you could smile and say, "You cry during movies." I'm not sure if that's adorable or dangerous. Playful. Confident. Still connected. 3. Control the tempo. Great conversationalists don't just connect, they lead. When the emotional moment peaks, you can switch gears, lighten the mood, offer a new topic, keep things dynamic. This shows her you're emotionally intelligent and socially confident. Remember, you're not here to be her therapist. You're here to be the man she opens up to and wants more of. That means understanding her feelings, but also leading the energy of the conversation. In the next part, we'll dive into how to naturally build tension and desire, using nothing more than presence, confidence, and emotional rhythm. Attraction isn't always about what you say, it's about how you say nothing. That's right. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any clever line or deep question. When you've created emotional connection, the next layer is emotional tension, and this is where most men freeze or fumble. They either keep talking to fill the space or break the moment with nervous humor. But real tension, the kind that makes her lean in, hold her breath, and wonder what you're thinking, comes from stillness, eye contact, and presence. Let's say she just shared something personal. Instead of jumping in with a response, pause. Look her in the eyes. Let the air between you thicken just a little. Maybe smile. Maybe say something soft like, "You don't share that with just anyone, do you?" Boom. Now she's not just emotionally open, she's emotionally alert. That slight moment of stillness, that emotional gravity, it's magnetic. It creates curiosity, desire, anticipation. Emotional tension isn't about pushing. It's about holding space with certainty, like a man who knows who he is and knows she feels it too. In the next and final part, we'll bring it all together. By now you've seen the full picture. Emotional connection isn't about memorizing questions or pretending to care. It's about being present, being curious, and being confident enough to guide the moment. Let's recap what turns a forgettable interaction into one she thinks about days later. You ask questions that touch her heart, not just her resume. You listen not just with your ears, but with your attention. You reflect not to fix her problems, but to make her feel understood. You balance safety with challenge, warmth with edge. And when the moment calls for it, you don't fill silence, you let it work for you. When you speak to a woman's emotions, you bypass logic and tap into her instincts. You become more than a guy she talked to, you become a presence she felt. That's why the most magnetic men aren't always the tallest, richest, or funniest. They're the ones who make her feel seen. They're the ones who take her on an emotional journey, not with fancy words, but with grounded energy depth and playful leadership. If you've ever wondered why some guys just get it, this is it. It's not game. It's not manipulation. It's emotional fluency. And the good news, you can develop it. Every conversation is a chance to practice. Every interaction is a doorway. So start today. Ask one emotional question. Pause longer than you normally would. Listen deeper than you ever have. Because when you touch her emotions, you leave a fingerprint on her memory. Now tell me in the comments what part of today's video hit you the hardest. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got much more coming.